Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Black Doctor Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes. I am host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by a man who believes in service. His name is Dr. Hari Drayton. Dr. Drayton is a transformational leader, motivational speaker, college professor, and entrepreneur. He has a background in criminal justice, guys. He's been in criminal justice longer than he's been alive. So that's a long time. He's such a young man, but it spans over 3 decades. His interests include criminal justice reform, restorative justice, juvenile justice, been there, done that. I can't wait to talk about that. Academia and health equity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Drayton, guys. Thank you, Dr. Drayton, for joining. This is really going to be interesting. I don't talk to many people who have your experience in criminal justice who also have a doctorate. So I'm looking to see how we're going to bridge all that together during the interview.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. So let's start. I know you're originally from New York. So let's talk about, where does this all begin for you? Who is young Dr. Hari Drayton?
Wow. Young Dr. Hari Drayton grew up in Harlem, New York, who had a village of people who inspired him. He had a mother who loved him fiercely, who believed in him, who told him anything that he wanted to do was possible, and loved me enough to share so many people with me to create a village. So many people of whom which my success, or whatever people deem is my success, I stand on those shoulders.
Yeah. So what's your mother's background, and what did she do growing up? How did you see her be a great model for you?
She was a stay-at-home mom. She was always there, always supportive. She helped me with my homework. She was a disciplinarian, but more of a disciplinarian in talk.
Yeah.
So she wasn't really a person who hit. We weren't beat like that. I didn't want to disappoint my mother.
Yeah.
Right. So she laid things out. There was an expectation, and because there was a open door, it was never a thing. She didn't lead, or she didn't parent with the style of fear. She parented with love. Yeah. And in that, I knew that I can go to her with anything and everything. And I was never afraid of that.
Yeah.
So that helped to really shape me to who I am.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And it sounds like, in her love, she also shared with you her expectations.
Yes.
And I think that's important for anybody growing up, that you don't have fear, but you understand that you can meet the bar set by your parents, and then go on to create your own bars.
Exactly. And then exceed them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yes.
So how did you become interested in criminal justice? And since we talked about your mom, what did she think about you going into that field?
So how did to answer the first question, I was in high school and I was in a mock trial, and I was playing a defense attorney, and that's what life was going to be for me. I was going to go to school, I was going to be a defense attorney, and things was going to be great. I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice to study criminal justice, and while there, they had a career day, and they had all these different criminal justice agencies there. And while I had a couple of people in my family who were correctional officers, I really didn't know that that was the title, correctional officer. I didn't know that's what it was. So a woman came up to me. She gave me an application. She asked me if I was interested in becoming a correctional officer. I asked her, what was that? And she told me, I said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not cut out for that. I'm going to be an attorney. So she gave me the application. She said, fill it out, send it in. And I was looking for the nearest trash receptacle to throw the application in, because I had no interest in doing that. So she said to me, and don't throw that application away. So she read my mind. So I said, all right, no harm, no foul, I'll fill it out. I filled it out. I took the test, and the rest, as they say, was history.
Wow.
The second question was, well, When I got called, I still wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, right? So my mother told me to try it. How would you know if you don't try it? Try it. If it's not for you, then you don't have to stay.
Yeah.
And I tried it and I didn't like it.
Mm. But you
But I
stayed.
stayed.
Yeah. What made you stay?
I stayed because of the comfortable lifestyle in which it afforded me.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So here you have a 21-year-old boy from Harlem who's making more money than probably any adult he knew.
Yeah.
So I stayed for the things that it provided me. So it wasn't always like that. So it wasn't every single day that I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I think going in so young and having a level of structure that I just wasn't used to was very difficult to get used to.
Yeah. 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 What did you learn about yourself during that early stage of being a correctional officer?
I learned that I was able to be groomed and to be molded, right?
Mm.
Because I I don't know what I expected when I got there,
Mm-hmm.
but what I encountered was not what I expected, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I learned resilience,
Mm.
right? I learned resilience. It taught me that if you can make it through this career, then you can make it anywhere. And what corrections has done was everything that I have done post corrections have been directly related or interrelated to the Department of Corrections.
Yeah. Wow. What do people need to know or understand about corrections work? Just these lay people out here who don't know that you think is important to share with them.
Corrections work is a very thankless position. People do not respect the work that we do. The people in the Department of Corrections work so very, very hard. And I think that, and when I say people do not respect it, the public and sometimes the administration. And it's probably because they don't see the work that you do. Whereas with a police officer, you can see them, they're visual, they're out front. And they're forgotten about the people in the Department of Corrections. And they do so much, so many of us do so much that we contribute to the betterment of public health and to in creating a safer environment.
I totally agree. We were talking a little bit before the interview started, and so as an educator, I've done some consulting work behind the bars in juvenile settings, and what you have said is right on the mark. And I think what happens is that when these individuals get sentenced and they're behind those bars, people often forget about them because they're no longer seen anymore. They're behind the bars, they're away from the public's eye. Yes. And I think what happens is when you guys go in to serve behind those bars, people forget about you too, because you're out of sight, out of mind. And so it's almost like they put the criminal and the correctional officer together. And it's like, no, they have their own life that they're living behind bars and we don't want to know about it. Mm-hmm. Not knowing how challenging the work is. It's also very rewarding, but there are a lot of circumstances in corrections work that you guys put your life in danger every day. And not just officers, even in administration. It's difficult work.
It is. It's very difficult work. And people don't understand the danger that you are in. And even to navigate and to make it through that, and I can only speak for myself, I could not go to work every day thinking about the danger, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
It is not until after you go home, after incidences, you will say, wow, that was dangerous, or this could have gone a different way. Mm-hmm. So you don't really think about the danger. I think that that is a protection for yourself mechanism, because you wouldn't be able to function in that type of environment. If now you have you do think that you because you're always on guard, right? Yeah. You're always on guard because you know that at any given time something could happen.
Yeah.
But I didn't walk in every day with the fear
Yeah.
that something would happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it. Because I think that would hinder you from doing your best work every day if you were afraid.
It would.
Let's talk about this. So in the correctional settings, and you use the word reform, there is a lot of policy in place as it relates to reforming inmates or those being detained in detention centers.
Yes.
From my own experiences, however, what's on paper, I oftentimes don't see in practice, and that I feel like I encounter many people who likely could be reformed if they were given the services that they truly needed. Give me your take on being able to reform inmates based on what the intent is, but what it actually looks like in practice.
I believe that reform is possible.
Yeah.
Rehabilitation is possible, and the reduction of recidivism is possible. But I think that we have to have services in place. I think that we have to have not only bringing people into incarceration for punishment, what happens while they're incarcerated, and more importantly, what happens when they're released.
Yeah.
It's just not enough to say, okay, you've done your time, get out, go, and don't come back, because you are now sending people back into the same environments that brought them back in. And now you're sending them back with a criminal record, right? And if you do not send them back with tools, if you do not send them back with coping things to help them to navigate the bureaucracy of coming out, because just coming, they're facing homelessness, right?
Yes.
On a lot of times, because depending on your crime, you may not be able to live in certain places, right? Depending on your crime, you may not be able to come back to your families. You may not be able to come back to life as you knew it. And so if we do not have anything in place for people once they are released, we're setting them up for failure.
Yeah. We're leaving them with only one option. And that's to come back.
Option.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, I've seen this in children. I've seen 13-year-olds who return after just days of being released, and they spent the majority of their teenage years in juvenile centers, and it becomes a comfortable space for them. So what happens when that child becomes 18? Going to the prison setting is expected. It's totally expected. So at what point in this world that you're living in and in the way that you're serving, that you say to yourself, I want to get my doctorate?
Wow, good question. After corrections, I've done a couple of things. I became a paralegal for the criminal defense practice of the Legal Aid Society. And I also became a professor at Monroe College. And I was teaching criminal justice. But what I saw was the unrepresented amount of people, and especially of color, who had doctorate degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I thought about it long and hard. And do you really want to go through that? Right? like, do you want to go through? Do you really want to what are you doing this for? And I decided, well, you know what? Because the one thing that I do know is what I start, I finish.
Yeah.
Right. And that quitting is not an option. And I wanted to make sure that I had the bandwidth to do this, because, I wasn't 20, I wasn't 30, I wasn't even 40, right? And I had to have the bandwidth to do this financially.
Yeah.
Right? Because I didn't want to be saddled with a bunch of bills, right? So I still had to work my job as a professor. And then by that time, I was invited back to the Department of Corrections to teach at the Correction Academy and to write with policies and different things like that. And then to add the doctorate studies on top of that, I said, well, why not?
Yeah.
Right. Why not? Why not? Because if worst came to worst, one of the jobs would go, but doctorate study would have to stay because I knew once I started, I had to complete it.
Yeah. Talk about that journey. So what was the most difficult part of that journey in the doctorate program?
The most difficult part of that journey was managing my time.
Yeah.
Excuse me, managing my time, because again, having two jobs and having to be able to say, I don't know what I would have done without my cohort.
Yeah.
Like we really, because it's a very scary time. And, even my friends and family, you could talk to them about what you're going through, but they can't, if you haven't been there, you can't fully appreciate the level of stress that you're under.
Yes.
So my cohort was my rock, right? And we still keep in touch. We're still good friends. And they we really helped each other through that process.
Yeah.
And I'm happy I did it.
Yeah. You said two things that I really, really appreciate. Number one, when I asked you about why did you do it, it was ultimately to take up space. You saw there was a void and there was a need, and you could fill in that void by taking up that space, by getting that doctorate. And so for me, that just goes right back to who you are as a servant, and as a servant leader. You want to be able to model and be an example for other people, to inspire them. And so that was one way to do it. Even if you never open your mouth, simply by being in that space, having that title in front of your name was going to encourage somebody. And then number two, when you get into the area of receiving your doctorate, you have to have a support system. This is not something that you want to enter into by yourself, because you got to talk to somebody that understands it, and that when you share it, they're like, okay, you'll be okay. Like, no, listen to me. I'm really going through it.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
So
this is real.
It is real. Like, it is your life. People say, well, you're just in school. Like, no. School is my life. This is everything for me right now. So this whole idea of hanging out, going out for cocktails, brunch, no, we're not doing any of that. I have work to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing I missed so much during that time, hanging out, not funerals, of course, but some events that you just had to be at.
Yeah.
And then you had to make a choice, but I knew, okay, I have to go here. Like, I just can't miss this. But I knew that was going to be 2 other days of studying, or maybe I have to call out sick from one of my jobs or take time off from one of my jobs because this is due.
Yeah. And people don't understand how often those in graduate programs, everywhere they go, there's a computer with them.
Exactly.
You don't get coffee without your laptop. You don't go to watch a football game. You take that laptop everywhere you go. Yeah, it's your life. What advice would you give someone who is thinking about doing the work that you're doing? Maybe having some of the experiences, but understanding, I want to go to a higher level.
Are we speaking educationally, or are we speaking in terms of the criminal justice itself?
I would say first with the criminal justice. Again, it's a very respectable field. And I don't think sometimes people see it as a field that, number one, provides great service, and that there is a need, and that we can fill in space there too.
Okay. So with respect to the criminal justice and law enforcement, understand your why.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do it? Because if you're doing it for power, that's the wrong reason to do it. Do it with compassion, and do it with your whole heart, because it is those things that will sustain you.
Yeah. And now the educational side of it, those who are seeking doctorate degrees, what advice would you give them? I can almost hear the same thing.
Ooh, yes, and it is the same thing. It is the same thing. As challenging as it is, it opened doors for you.
Yeah.
It gives you a seat at the table. And since obtaining a doctorate degree, I've been invited to places that I would not have gone had I not had those letters in front of my name.
Yeah.
I just became a program manager for the Morehouse School of Medicine. for the Masters of Administration in Justice Involved Care. And that is because of that doctorate's degree.
Yeah.
Right?
I see it right now. He's in
that
Georgia
was
now,
some.
y'all. He's in Georgia now, y'all. He's in my stomping ground.
Yes. I'm in Georgia now. And and it's because of that doctorate degree, and it does open doors for me. It's worth it, and to get a support team, get people who believe in you, and to know that you can do it. And when you start, what you start, you finish.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your biggest inspiration?
Without a doubt, my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's left this earth almost 2 decades, but even today, even the doctorate degree that came way after she was gone was my biggest inspiration in doing it. And she has truly is the wind beneath my wings.
Wow. That's beautiful. Still honoring mom today. That's beautiful.
Still honoring her today. And I hope I've done her proud.
Yeah. Oh, she's definitely proud. She's definitely proud. So as a professor, I know that you're still doing some of that work. What is one of your goals, or what do you hope your students receive from you by encountering you as a professor?
I hope that I hope to create critical thinkers. I hope to create change agents. It's a position, being a professor, that I don't take lightly. I thank God for allowing me the opportunity to be entrusted in the molding and shaping of the minds of our future leaders. And it's been very, very rewarding. And that is equally as important to me as being a correction officer.
Yeah.
And other things that I've done. And I've been in the academic space for 9 years now. And when you see that the students get it, and sometimes, because they still email me long after graduation. In fact, I got an email today for a request for a reference into graduate school. And so those things really, really warm my heart that, if you could play a small part in someone's success, for someone to say, well, you believed in me, you helped me to get it.
Yeah.
Then it's all been worth it.
Yeah. That's amazing. And to think, even with that, because they don't have to continue to reach out, right? But they do. And so, there was something that you said or did that they are appreciative of you for just being present. And so I bet the experience in Dr. Drayton's class is one that they never forget. And they probably compare other people to you, like, well, Dr. Drayton does this and Dr. Drayton says that.
Well, they tell me to go rate my professor, but I haven't had the nerve or the courage to go do it. They say, well, some people say great things about you, but I've never looked at it. But I believe that I make a great impact to them. And it shows in the evaluations, right? So what the administrators and faculty think of me is not as important as the end of semester reviews, when the students tell you what an impact you made and how you've changed. Because and you have to do that with the service. It's not just lessons, and because that's part of it, but it is connecting with the students and meeting them where they are. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people. And that's another thing when you ask, like, how did corrections impact me? In the Department of Corrections, you work with so many people, so many prisoners, so many staff, and you get to learn so many people and their personalities. So that really, really prepared me for academia, knowing that it's so many different personalities that I have to encounter, and the need, what does each person need? And, I know what their potentials are.
Yeah.
And just to able to encourage them and push them to their full potential.
Yeah. I think, being a professor, it's one thing to teach young students in like the K-12 setting, but when you get to the higher ed setting, these people are really developing into the people they're going to be as adults. And so you do have a big part in molding them. But I think from what I'm hearing, you're saying you're allowing them to express, and all you're doing is listening and tapping into the potential that they're demonstrating to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they have it in them already. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
They have it in them, and they just need some, because a lot of times in speaking with them, they've had no one to encourage them.
Yep.
They had no one to believe in them. So you have to be the professor, and you have to be the counselor, and sometimes the parent.
Yep.
And you have to play different roles, and knowing what each person needs, and to be able to do that for someone, I think it's a blessing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you're doing great work. And so you're in a new position now. Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, really, really building this new position.
Yeah.
Because it's a new program, and it's really taken off. And I really like to see, I am reaching a lot of my different old contacts, and this position is bringing me into alignment with a lot of people in the criminal justice field who haven't spoken to in a while, because it's being marketed. So people are calling me, whether it's on my Morehouse phone or on my cell phone, or inboxing me or something like that. So where I see myself is building this program to be even greater than I even expected to be.
Yeah. 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 Well, you got my support. And so you're here in Atlanta. So if you ever need anything from me, feel free to reach out, and I'll do whatever I can to have your back, brother.
Thank you, my brother.
Because that's what we do here in Georgia. Okay.
That's what we do.
So, it's people like you, Dr. Drayton, that we really love to have in the Black Doctoral Network. You're doing great work. You're very passionate, and you understand the responsibility of the degree. So talk a little bit about your experience with the Black Doctoral Network.
Oh, I've met some great people through the Black Doctoral Network. And when I joined, it was during the pandemic, right? And we met virtually, and we started keeping in touch. And recently at the gala, we got to meet people in person. And it is such a phenomenal organization that support you, that encourages you, and that make you want to be better than you were yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Really
that's great. That's a great way. We have to capture that in the moment and start selling that somewhere.
Yes.
I love that.
It does.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today on the Black Doctor Talk podcast. This has been a great interview. I told you before it started, I was very excited to talk to you, and it was great having met you in person at the gala as well. So this has continued to be an excellent interaction with you from the beginning to the end. So if you don't mind, tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about where they can go to find more out about you and the work that you're doing.
Okay, you can visit my website at drharidrayton.com. Or you can visit me on LinkedIn at drharidrayton.com. And to connect with me, you can email me at hdrayton@msm.edu.
Well, guys, you heard it right from his mouth. Those are all the ways you can connect with him. I encourage you to go out and find him, connect with him, share with him. And while you're doing that, please also find the Black Doctoral Network and connect with us. We would love to be a part of your community. Well, that is it for now, guys. This has been an amazing interview. Again, thank you, Dr. Drayton, for joining me today.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes, for having me.
No problem, guys. I hope you'll come back. Join me again next time, where I will always have another amazing guest for you. But until then, please go back, watch us on YouTube, subscribe to all of our channels, and connect with us. And until we meet again, as I always say, be safe, guys, and be blessed. See you then.